Hawaii Entertainment News, where we will talk about all the news that's happening around the film and entertainment industry in Hawaii.
You're supposed to say, I told you so.
Enough! Are you okay?
Oh my gosh, he's Superman!
This is a video game, which means we all have special skills.
Aloha everybody, welcome to Hawaii Entertainment News. I'm Teddy Wells, your host. Hawaii Entertainment News is here to introduce you to Hawaii's magnificent talent. So we've invited Ralph Malani here to talk to you about hair. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, talking to our guests about hair. Let's talk hair.
Hair on a movie set is completely different than hair in a beauty salon. In a salon, we have to be constantly updated on the trends and what's in with fashion and style. On a movie set, that's important, but the most important thing is something called continuity. Continuity means that if the actor's bangs are split here, they have to be split there the entire time that we're shooting that scene. And you basically are watching to make sure that there isn't a hair out of place and that everybody looks exactly the same, so that when they edit the film, you don't notice that, you know, in 1 second the bangs are this way and the other second the bangs went that way. So that's kind of our biggest job, is to make sure the continuity is always consistent. The other thing that makes it different is wig work. I never had to do wigs in a salon atmosphere. The only wig experience I had were friends who were drag queens who ran for pageants, and you know, that was kind of fantasy hair. I think the biggest thing that any extra background or actor should know is there is a huge process on what you're supposed to look like. It's not something that was made up the day of the shoot and the minute that we see you. It's something that the director and the producer and the hair department head and the makeup department head and costumes all got together and made a decision on the look. And once you are billed, is what they call it. When they build you, that means that you've put on your costume, they've done your hair, and they've done your makeup. You need to stay that way, because that's continuity. You have to look exactly the same from the minute you were done until the time you leave at the end of the day. And it becomes an issue a lot here in Hawaii because we have crazy weather. We have rain, we have wind, we have hot sun, and people sweat, and you know, people get frustrated because a lot of times, to be honest, they don't give you a place to sit that has shade and you're out in the sun. And you just have to try really hard to maintain the original look that you were given. And if you, for some reason, had to pull your hair up because you were sweating or it rained on you, that's when you look for someone in costumes, hair, or makeup and say, this is what happened, and they'll fix it. And that's what we're there for, you know. And I know sometimes it gets a little crazy because there's so many, you know, I've worked on movie sets where there's 200-300 background actors, and it's a period look, and everybody has to look like they're from 1910, and everything is very thought out, and it's uncomfortable a lot of times. But we always say this: you chose to come and do this job, and it's part of the job. So you have to realistically know that that's the way you're supposed to look, and that's the way you're supposed to be the entire time. You are not playing yourself. You are playing a part, and that's the part that we always get thrown in our face. I don't like the way that looks on me. I don't look good with my hair that way. Well, it's not up to you. And it might sound a little harsh, but we are so busy in the beginning of the day trying to make everyone look a certain way that what you get is what you get. And unfortunately, sometimes you don't like it, but you're not playing you. You know, you're playing a character, and you have to remember that. And that's something that we're constantly reminding people of is, you know, when you do your own hair and makeup to go out, you can look any way you want to. But when you come and you sign up for this job, you have to follow the rules. Now he's mad because he can't chew his thing. I know. They're so mean to you. Are you SAG? You should call your agent. When I thought about going into this, I went and signed up to be an extra because I wanted to see what it was like on set, and I wanted to see how the hair people did their job.
Right, that makes sense.
And I did extra work a couple times, and then they asked me to be a stand-in for one of the actors on 5-0, and I was like, okay, I'll do that because then I can really see what they do. And then I made friends with some of them, and I got to see, you know, who was nice and who wasn't nice, and so that when I got on, I didn't really know things like set etiquette or a set bag, but I kind of knew enough where I knew not to stand in certain places. And, you know, nobody tells you what last looks means. They don't say anything. So when they call it and you're standing there and then they all, what are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know. What am I doing? You know, tell me what I'm doing. But they won't. They just yell. But when I first started working on sets, I could not understand for the life of me why people yell so much. And it used to bother me because I don't talk to people disrespectfully, and I don't like to be spoken to disrespectfully. But when I got a little more into it and paid a little bit more attention, you always have to remember two things. The person who's yelling at you is usually being yelled at by somebody else. So it's not you they're yelling at. And to not take anything personally. They're, just like you're doing your job, they're doing their job. And although I still think that people could be a little nicer and considerate when they speak, I get that in a set situation, they don't always have time to think before they speak because, again, they're being screamed at in their earpiece. And as long as you remember that, it shouldn't be a bad experience. It's just part of the job. It happens to the background, it happens to the actors, it happens to us, the crew, all the time. And it was probably the hardest thing I had to deal with as when I started working on sets. It was the not get your feelings hurt and not get defensive when somebody screams at you. Because honest to God, the first time I ever got called, the lady called me and said, do you want to work on set for Hawaii 5-0? And I'm like, well, what do you do? Because I didn't know. And she didn't answer me. And then she's like, just bring a set bag and bring a set chair. And I go, well, what goes into a set bag? She didn't answer me. And then you show up and they're really mean to you. Like, this is what you bring? And I'm like, there is a situation when you first come onto a set that makes it a little difficult if you've never worked on a set before. And that is the fact that unless you're working with someone who is very giving and likes to teach, you're never really told anything. And you kind of learn by your mistakes and get yelled at a lot for things that you didn't even know. It's hard. To get into this part of the beauty industry is not an easy thing because there's no book that tells you this is what a set bag is. I had no idea what a set bag was. I had no idea what a set chair was. And nobody told me. Nobody sends you a pamphlet and says, this is what your kit should look like. They just call you and say, are you available? Bring your kit. I didn't know what that was. And when I asked, well, what exactly goes into a kit? I got laughed at and hung up on. So it's a little difficult. You need to try and find someone in the union to kind of mentor you and take you under their wing. And I always try to do that. Now that I've been in positions where I'm the key and I can hire people, I always make sure that I have a list that I email them. And it's every single thing that I expect them to have in their bag. And I make a list. I take pictures of what a set chair looks like. I take pictures of what a bag looks like. Because a lot of old timers in the union have forgotten, I think, that at one time they had to be told what all this stuff was, and they just don't want to share. And it's unfortunate, but it's just the way it is. And the other thing is not to give up. I kind of felt in the beginning that it was a a way of making you give up so you wouldn't come back, because you have to make so many days before you can get into the union. And it just seemed like some people didn't want you there and didn't make it easy for you. But that's not everybody. That's just a small group of people. And when you start to work and you start to realize who's who, there are so many great people that'll take you under their wing and share with you, you know, what you need to do and what's right and what's wrong, and set etiquette. Nobody tells you what that is until someone's in your face screaming at you because you're standing in the wrong place or you said something, you know. And these are all things that, unfortunately, the unions have never made a book that say, before you start your first day, this is what you should know, you know. And it should happen, because it would make everything so much easier. But it's a fun job. Once you get in there and you realize that you're a part of Hollywood, it's great. And I have to pinch myself sometimes. You know, I'm sitting on a movie set with a major movie star, and wow, you know, how many people can say that? And the reward is so rewarding. And there's blood, sweat, and tears, but there's also laughter, friendships that you'll make that are amazing, and opportunities. I just did a movie where they flew me to Bangkok for 6 weeks, and I worked in Thailand, and wow, you know, again, I would have never expected that in my life, but it's part of this industry, and there's so much that you can do in this industry if you tough it out and you learn. And you seek knowledge. You know, it's never going to just come to you freely. You have to ask for it. Sometimes you get told no, and sometimes you're lucky and you get told, you know, yes. And that's what I've done. I've become that person who sends pictures, calls them and says, do you know what this is? Do you know what this is? You know, let me show you what it is. Because I never got that. I never got that from anybody. If anything, they tried so hard to make me never want to come back. And I mean,
so you could see an obvious push.
Oh yeah,
to keep you from
because they got all the work for years, and then they saw somebody new coming in, and they don't want to share the money. If you want to be the best, I always tell kids this when I go to career days at schools, you have to start at the bottom of the top, not at the bottom of the bottom, because you cannot go, and there's nothing wrong with working at a Supercuts or a Fantastic Sam's, nothing at all. But if you start at the bottom of a $20 haircut place, you will only get to a $20 haircut. And those clients will never follow you to a $100 haircut salon because they can't afford it. If you start at the bottom of a $100 hair salon, then you will be a $100 hairdresser someday, and you will be at that level. And that's my work ethic. I wanted to be the best at everything that I've done, and I've always tried really hard to start at the bottom of the top. And it's worked so far. After high school graduation, I wanted to be a fashion designer. I went to the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising in Los Angeles, and I loved the glitz, the glamour, and the theory of fashion. What I didn't like was the reality of fashion, which was sweatshops and factories and long days or retail. And I didn't want to work in retail. So I decided the next best thing for me to do was to go into the beauty industry. And I went to cosmetology school. And when I finished cosmetology school, and I did this all in secret, I didn't tell my father because he would have killed me. He wanted me to go to business school. My mother told me, you better make a lot of money or your dad's going to kill you. And I asked my cosmetology teacher who the most expensive famous hairdresser in Beverly Hills was. And at that time, it was Jose Hubert. He was the original celebrity hairdresser. He was responsible for iconic looks like Farrah Fawcett's Charlie's Angels hair. He did Elizabeth Taylor the last 25 or 30 years of her life. Cher. I mean, all the big names went into the salon. And I found out where it was. I walked into Jose Hubert, which was a palace of a hair salon. I mean, marble floors, crystal chandeliers, 35 hairstylists, 35 colorists, women who only shampooed, a cafe where they would serve you cappuccino at your chair, and VIP rooms where all the biggest stars in Hollywood would go in to have their hair done in secret. And I applied and I applied and I applied, and I was always told we're not hiring. And About the sixth or seventh time I walked in, I noticed that there was a woman doing someone's hair who had 2 Hawaiian bracelets on. And I made a beeline around the front desk woman because they were mean and scary. And I walked up to her and I said, "Hey, are you from Hawaii?" And she said, "Yes." And I go, "Me too. And I really want a job." And I got a job. And it was the hardest thing I'd ever had to go through. I started with, I would say, 12 other assistants, because in high-end salons in New York and in Beverly Hills, you can't just be a hairstylist. You have to go through what's called an assistant program. And I started my assistant program with 10 other people. The first day that we worked, I was one of 3 that stayed. They all went to the bathroom and never came back, because we worked for very expensive European hairdressers. They were mostly from France and from Italy, and they were very, very mean to the assistants. I spent many a day walking to my car and crying, and coming back to the salon to work, hiding in the bathroom and crying and coming back after I washed my face. It was very, very difficult, but it was baptism by fire. They wanted you to earn your seat in the salon, and they made it as difficult as possible for you to get that seat. And I stuck it out because I wanted to be one of them. I wanted to live the way they did, and it all paid off. And I promised myself that when I had an assistant, I wouldn't be like that. I was going to be nice. And I have had a handful of assistants in my career, and they've all gone on to be amazing hairdressers in New York, in San Francisco, in Los Angeles. They work for the top salons. They do Fashion Week every year. They invite me to assist them, which makes me a proud papa, because I gave them not only knowledge, but I gave them love. And I think that goes a long way. And they've always remembered that. And I remember everybody who's ever been nice to me and ever been helpful and taught me something. One day in the salon, Jose Bear actually took me aside and gave me a little lecture about being too nice and being too sensitive. And that if I wanted to go far in the industry, that I needed to grow a thicker skin. And I remember, I'll remember this for the rest of my life. We did very, very wealthy clients. These were people who could go anywhere and did, and never really told you thank you. Weren't always so nice to you, but that's who we did. And he told me, if you let people walk all over you, they will, because they see you as a servant. They don't see you at the same level as they are. If you give them what they give you, you're an equal, and they will treat you as an equal. And that was very hard for me to comprehend, because I've been raised to be a nice person and not to be disrespectful. But it was the best lesson that I'd ever been given in my life, because I learned how to stand up for myself in a nice way, and not to be pushed over, and not to be disrespected. And I've made a great career out of being me. When I left Los Angeles to come back home, I started working in the Aveda salon at Ala Moana, and I started getting hired to do a lot of editorial. The modeling agencies in Hawaii at that time would send what they were calling Polynesian-looking models, which were Filipino or Japanese. And they would put them in a fake lei and a fake grass skirt and put them in the background. And I got a little offended and decided one day that I was going to start a Polynesian modeling agency. So I did. And for 5 years I ran it, and I got a lot of people jobs in movies and runway and editorial. And being a hairstylist, I worked a lot in the local beauty pageant scene. And I did like Miss Filipino Hawaii, Miss Narcissus Queen, Cherry Blossom Queen. There was nothing for Polynesian people. So again, I was like, okay, well, I'll do it. So I started the Mr. and Miss Polynesia Pacific pageant. And it was a pageant based on creativity and talent more than traditional beauty. And I wanted to showcase the amazing talent in our islands. And all of the categories were that they had to make things. So their evening wear, I gave them bolts of Samoan fabric and they had to create an evening look. The vegetable couture, everything they wore had to be made from something from the earth. Nothing could be fabric or sewn. It had to be leaves, feathers, flowers. The talent was the best part of the whole experience because I didn't give them a time limit. And they came up with amazing theatrical productions. And my pageant was long. It was something sometimes 6 hours long, but nobody left because it was that exciting. I used to tell people it's better than any luau you will ever go to in your life because these kids really had the village behind them, and the village got excited, and the village came, and they came to win. And it was amazing. And then I took a little tiny part of my experience working in drag queen pageants, and I made a fantasy Polynesian category. And I hired all my drag queen friends to make costumes for these contestants. And they came out as giant flowers, as gods, as birds. I mean, it was amazing. And it is the one thing that I did in my career so far that I actually miss doing because life got busy and I couldn't give it the attention that it needed. I did it for 5 years. But it's something you can watch on YouTube now. You just push in Mr. and Miss Polynesia and you can see some of the videos that were taken. And it was an amazing way to teach these kids that in a world where Western values are pushed on you and the ideal of Western beauty is pushed on you, that you should be proud of the culture that you come from and you should showcase it. And whether it be by your tattoos or jewelry or wearing a flower in your ear, it makes you special. It makes you different from everyone else in the whole world. And that should be celebrated, and you should celebrate it every single day. And that's why I did it. I loved it. I had contestants that were girls that were 5'10", size 2, looked like a runway model. I also had contestants that were 5'5", 250 pounds, healthy girls. And not one of them was treated any differently. And I praised everybody the same. And I think one of the most amazing gifts that I got from doing that pageant was a father of a larger girl who ran, absolutely beautiful young lady, telling me how much confidence I had given her by letting her run in a beauty pageant. And why isn't that normal?
And next time on Hawaii Entertainment News,
I love doing film and theater. It's my passion. I love telling stories. I love bringing things to life out of the ether, out of, just snatching an idea like on a page and building a whole world that other people can observe and take part in.
Hawaii Entertainment News, where we will talk about all the news that's happening around the film and entertainment industry in Hawaii.
You're supposed to say I told you so.
Enough! Are you okay?
Oh my gosh, he's Superman!
This is a video, which means we all have special skills.
Is that it? I think so.